Hi, welcome to my podcast, Real Conversations with Patty, where I bring on special guests that I admire because of their perseverance and dedication to break barriers and show every little girl and boy que si se puede. Today's special guest is a person who I admire and follow for a long time now on Instagram. She has accomplished many things professionally and personally, from being on the radio to changing totally different jobs to being transparent and real with her followers about how she's feeling and giving helpful tips to us. I have the honor to introduce my special guest who has done exactly that, Dayana. Welcome.
Yay, that's a great introduction. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for coming and letting me interview you. I wanted to start off. You're very transparent. You're very positive, even when life gets tough. So I wanted to know, how was your childhood like?
I think my childhood was, I'm a daughter of immigrants. It was your typical Mexican childhood, where my parents worked in the fields. And so those that have parents that worked in the fields, they get up at 5 a.m, earlier than most parents. And then they're also home later than most parents, right? So as a little girl, I have a lot of memories of being with nannies because it was before I was like going to school. And so I remember just like being with nannies all the time and my parents getting home, dirty, smelling, that's how they get home from the fields, and then just being exhausted and doing it all over again. And I think that when I started school, I felt this responsibility of like, I have to work as hard as my parents are working, but now in school, right? So just from the very beginning, getting good grades and being a good student was something that I set a standard for myself. My parents didn't even have to remind me how important that was. But also I think the downside or the negative part of your traditional Mexican home are those stereotypes that we are still battling with, And so it was also a home where a lot of stuff were hush hush, as even though I'm a child and I'm witnessing these things happening in my home that I have questions about. My parents didn't have the healthiest marriage. And so just witnessing what you would call today a toxic relationship, at that time, we don't have labels for these things. So we don't really know what we're looking at. But I also had my moments, I think, as a child of just kind of being confused and knowing like this doesn't seem right, but it's my normal, right? And so just going through the typical unhealthy marriage that my parents went through, how common alcoholism is in a Mexican household, it's just something that was normal for me. Like, oh, don't every dads get drunk every day, no, just experiencing, watching my mom become a single mother, watching her have to survive on her own, not knowing English, being undocumented, having to care for me and my sister. And so, but I say that even though my childhood had those downsides, it's definitely made me who I am today. So I always try to kind of look back and remember the good times. And even when I am reminded of those traumas as an adult, remember that it's something I'm going to fight so that my children don't experience. So there's kind of a positivity.
You talked a little bit about going to school and that no one needed you to remind you that, okay, you need to go to school. I wanted to know, what was like the moment that you knew that you're like, okay, I need to go to school to get a better life, understand a little bit more on what I'm experiencing, and what shaped you?
There is an exact moment, and I've shared this story before. I always was a good girl with good grades. I was always a girl that, oh, we're going to announce student of the month. And the whole class would be like, it's going to be Dayana. Like, I was like that annoying, like kid. So that was my whole middle school, elementary. And it wasn't until I got seated down in high school by my counselor, and she was like, okay, so where are we going to college? And it had never been something I put so much thought into, because I was just so focused on getting through today. So we're just going to be a good girl today, get good grades today. But then I found myself like a junior in high school, and my counselor is like, you have the grades to apply anywhere you want. And so let's do your college application. And it was at that moment that I realized, holy, I did something all these years, and it led up to this moment where I now have the opportunity to go be a college student. Like, you have to think of the family that I grew up with. That was a different world. Like college, all I knew about college was what I saw on Disney Channel and like movies. Like it was almost like a fantasy world. And so here I am, 14, 15 years old, actually fantasizing now about I'm going to be a college student. And so I filled out applications and I considered, other schools that would have me leave Fresno know, but I couldn't. At that young age, I felt like I needed to stay in Fresno. And so Fresno State was my choice. I remember even when I got my acceptance letter, because I applied to college, right? And like I didn't tell anybody. I didn't come home and tell my parents I'm applying to college. I was still trying to process, like, am I really going to have a chance to go to college, you know? And all of my friends that I grew up with in high school, they didn't go to a four-year university. A lot of them just sort of went into the workforce or they went into community colleges. So I was very scared into what I was walking into by myself. But I remember when I got my acceptance letter, I got it, went in my room and opened it by myself and like read it. And I was like, this is becoming real. Like now I have to tell my parents I'm going to call, you know?
Yeah.
I held on to the letter, I kid you not, for like 3 days. And I didn't tell a single soul. I think I was just so overstimulated and trying to process what my life was about to become. And so I always say it was Mrs. Clark, my counselor at Roosevelt High School, who just sat me down and even opened up that world for me. And I always think like if I had a bad counselor who never told me, let's apply, I would have missed the deadline. I would have had to wait a semester or a year and who knows what would have happened, you know? And so I owe everything to that moment. And then, you know, like telling my parents that I'm going to college, they were like, okay, we didn't expect anything less. Like they were just so nonchalant about it, you know, like, yeah. And I think it wasn't for them until I brought home my mom a Fresno State mom shirt that I had found at the bookstore when I was like on campus doing my registration. I think that's when it hit her. Like she was like, hey, now I'm a mom of a college student, you know? And so I think all my family members had this moment. They were realizing that I was sort of changing the trajectory of what we had been used to. And so my sister is at Fresno State right now. She's finishing up her studies. My mom even went back to college like way later in her life. And so, yeah. And I love that now that's going to be such a normal. Like my kids, they have two parents with college degrees. One person, one thing can change the entire trajectory for your family. And that's so powerful.
I feel like counselors are really, really important in high school. So I wanted to go a little bit more on your education. You also completed your master's degree. I wanted to know what made you go for it.
I kid you not. It was literally the fact that I read online that only 3% of Latinas have a master's. That statistic offended me. Like I was like, hey, no way there's only 3%. And it was such a impulsive decision to apply to grad school. I saw this statistic, I don't know where. It blew my mind that it was such a little number because the number of like high school graduates or bachelors, it's pretty high for Latinas or just Latinos in general, but it just drops in grad school. So I applied and I remember even being like, well, let me pick this major. Like, you know, I wanted to add to that statistic. And then I gave my acceptance letter also for grad school. Again, right? I have this moment again because I think I have like a 3-year-old baby and I'm like, que chingados hice? Like I have a baby and I work and I just got accepted into grad school. So again, it was something that just kind of, I went for it. And I feel like I do a lot of things like that, right? Even like cutting my hair off. Like, you're like, what inspired you to cut your hair? I was sitting one day and I said, I'm gonna go chop my hair off. And I did it. Clearly, I'm learning I'm impulsive right now. But you know what? I did it. It was 2 years. I did it during the pandemic. I never got my graduation because it was a pandemic. So I am sad my parents didn't get to experience like, you know, seeing me and my daughter seeing me. But I have my degree right here in my office. I am so proud of that accomplishment because it was not easy just for being in postpartum, having my daughter being so small. I would do my homework, breastfeeding her. I would type my essays one hand, holding her with the other. And then during the pandemic, we're just going crazy already. So that was definitely a challenge that I'm really, really proud of.
Bet it was with everything going on, especially being a mom. Oh my gosh, mis respetos. I wanted to know, who's your role model?
Oh man, that's always such a deep question. I think I have different role models because I don't see myself as just one thing. You know, we're all layers, right? So like I'm Dayana, the woman. I'm Dayana, the professional. I'm Dayana, the mother. So I have different role models for all of those different layers. But I would say that my role model as far as my morale and my character would be my mom. And I think that's just consistent across all those layers. Honestly, if she were to see this interview, she would be like me, you know, because we fight and argue so much. She would not believe. I have seen my mom literally live 2 lives, from the woman who worked minimum wage jobs, didn't know English, was often bullied or taken advantage of for her immigration status, to today, my mom mom is a homeowner. She works in corporate America. She's in sales. She's in a mostly white company. She became a citizen. She learned the language of, of America. I've just seen her like become this whole other woman. And anytime that I've had difficulty in my life or I go through my struggles, I always have to remind myself, my mom got through things with so much more disadvantage. I'm an American citizen. I speak English. I have so much more opportunity than she did, and she got through this. And so I would say that I always look at her story to give me guidance. And I realized she was my role model when me and my children's dad separated. I remember thinking, I have two choices here, and it's sort of accepting the treatment that I was being put through or choosing me. And in that process, though, I am going to change my children's lives because now they're going to be living in a two-parent household. I'm going to change my life. There's going to be so much. This one felt scarier to choose me. But I remember thinking, my mom did it. My mom did it when she still wasn't at her peak. And she had the strength to decide enough is enough. I'm choosing me and I'm going to be okay. And that's when I realized my mom's my role model, because that is exactly what helped me make that decision, where I thought, all right, Dayana, it's going to be hard. You're going to cry. You're going to be heartbroken, but you're going to be okay because you literally were raised by somebody that, went through that.
I'm telling you, moms, oh my gosh. I wanted to go back to the education route that you took. You mentioned that there's only 0.3% of Latinas in getting a higher education. I wanted to know, did you feel a stranger? Yeah. I would assume there would be more other people that aren't Latinas. How did you get over it? And you're like, you know what, I'm just here and I'm going to go for it. Like, what was your mindset like?
I would say my cohort was pretty diverse, but as we're sharing about our lives, because I did humanities. And so you naturally we're talking about a lot of humanities is really based on just like human interaction. We're talking about traumas and brain and relationships and religion. Naturally, as I'm learning my classmates, you see that other students, their parents sort of set them up to get here. This was part of their journey. They were supposed to graduate high school and then go to college and then get a master's and then go get a great career. And you just hear them in their stories, and my father does this and my mother does that. And they come from generations of higher education. And so I think it was as them just sharing that, I was internalizing like, if I have not come from that, and I am literally paving the way. But I would always think, right, like, oh, this is going to be my daughter one day, like talking about, sharing at her master's, cohort. Yeah, because my mom has her master's and, my dad has his bachelor's. And so I would feel really happy to be like, I'm totally lost here, but I'm paving the way for my kids. At the time I just had my daughters. I even feel like that at work sometimes, even then looking around and being like, I'm just one decision away from not having been here and been given this opportunity.
When you were growing up, what was your dream?
Okay, so my mom always reminds me of this memory that she has, and I remember this memory. And I wish I had the thing already, and I recently ordered it, but I remember very young, right? So my mom and I would go around to do like los mandados on the city bus. And so, we'd go to the WIC office, like, government assistant offices. There was a memory that my mom holds on to where we went into an office of someone that was helping her. We got seated and was told to wait. And so she says that I was kind of like poking around the woman's desk and that I was really fascinated by her nameplate on her desk. So I was like, Mommy, like, what does that say? And so she was, oh, es su nombre de la señora, porque ella es una directora. And so she said that when we walked out, I was like on the bus, just sort of in my thoughts. And then I told her, Mommy, when I grow up, I'm going to have a job like that. And I'm going to have my name on a nameplate. And it's going to say Dayana Jiselle Contreras. So she says that, I was small and I said that. My mom reminded me recently, because fast forward to today, I am a program director and I have an office, and I have a beautiful office with sunlight and windows and wooden, nice oak desk. So she said the other day, like, you said you were going to do this. And it really hit me. And I thought, I need my nameplate. So I ordered a plate with my name on it, and it's on the way, but I can't wait to put it up in my desk. And I feel like little Dayana would just feel so accomplished. But I think I didn't have a specific career dream, but I think as a little girl, I always thought that the world of a professional woman, it fascinated me. And I I knew that I wanted to be a professional woman with my little agenda and my little desk, and so I didn't play house. I didn't play doctor. Me as a little girl, I played oficina, so that was my dream.
So you have had many jobs. I wanted to know, for people who are listening or watching, what was your process like when applying to each of them?
I started at radio. Okay. That was the first thing I did but people don't know is that the other side of radio, besides clearly hosting and being on the air, is that we also do a lot of community events. And so we are going out into the community. And I think that's what sparked my love for my community. Some of my most favorite memories weren't always being alone locked in the studio, but it was when I was out interacting with listeners. And so when I left radio, I got into more of the nonprofit world because that's community centered. Even though maybe on the outside looking in, it doesn't make sense like, oh, you went from radio to nonprofit community organization. It really does though, because then now I was just doing community work. And I love that so much that I started branching outside of my jobs. And so now I was sort of putting on my own events and I was sort of making my own projects outside of work. And then because I had come from radio, I naturally had hosting skills, so then now I'm being asked, can you host this and can you host that? And that's sort of what propelled me into what I'm doing today. And really ever since just joining nonprofit, I've always been in the nonprofit world. It's just been in different positions. At a time, I also became a reporter. So I was reporting on a lot of housing issues, community inequality issues, but that also felt very normal because I'm a journalist. That's my degree is in journalism and I'm a writer. That's my biggest strength. So I did that. And just naturally because of the pandemic again, I had a baby, I was going through a lot of life changes. I left the newspaper and I went back into nonprofit organizations. But just because of all my experiences in these different positions, I've been with Fresno EOC. They really just helped me really gain a lot of experience when it came to learning the nonprofit world. I really feel that they prepared me for where I am now. And now I'm a manager and I oversee 2 different programs and I oversee a total of 10 other Latina women from Bakersfield to Merced. It really does make sense in my head and it's a perfect path that brought me here. But I definitely do get that. Like, what do? You do this, but then you do that, but then I saw you here. And so I guess on the outside, it could look kind of confusing, but I do believe in growth. Anytime that some opportunity has fallen on my lap, I always go and pray about it. And I have never made a decision just for the money. I've never gone somewhere because they're just offering me more than what I'm making. I have refused to change positions sometimes, even though it's more money. I've found good opportunities sometimes, but I truly still ask God, like, I want to be serving my purpose in my job. And so I'm very careful with where I'm going and where I'm at. And so I think I'm here to stay in the nonprofit world for a while and my own projects that have nothing to do with work. I'm so grateful that radio got me a lot of exposure. And so I definitely owe the introduction to the community to radio, but I'm also going to take credit in saying I've kept that relevancy myself and that I've gained people that feel connected to me because of me being authentic, and that has no longer to do with radio anymore. That really is me. And I say this because I get told this when somebody comes up to me, like it happened yesterday at an event I hosted. Someone comes up to me like with their arms open, ready to hug, right? And so I'm like hugging, but then I'm thinking, who's this? Do I know you? Like, are you a like, and then it's like, I follow you. And so then I feel so warm that somebody just follows me, feel so comfortable to come give me a hug because we're strangers, but they feel so connected to me and my story because I'm so transparent. Anyone that really does know me, someone who really is my friend would tell you like, that is really who Dayana is. I am that. I'm the girl that will have the deep conversation with you in the middle of an event because I'm a talker. And I can also tell you that I probably respond to 99.9% of every message I get. When you message me, you're like, this is a long shot. I'm like, no, it's not. I'm gonna bring you.
Yeah.
So take time to do that.
You are, based on talking to me, because we're literally strangers, you do seem like a good person. And that's really admirable because a veces mucho se les sube just because they have followers or ya están a la posición más alta. Al contrario, because ya estás a la más alta, I feel like you should help other people, which I really like about you because everything from therapy, from your job, from events that you do, and I really like that, that you give information out.
That means a lot because, my friends and family, they're supposed to say nice things about me, but a stranger saying something that, they pick up that I think that means more to me, because that's based off of such little information, that someone is receiving on the other end. So I appreciate that.
So I wanted to know, what skills do you think people would need in general for a job that they would like from like what you had?
People skills. People skills, being able to interact with different types of people while you stay true to who you are. So that's a challenge, because it's so much easier to change depending who you're interacting with. But, I've had mentors through my life who have, I think, done a great job at teaching me that it doesn't matter what room I'm in, I'm to stay true to myself. So I could walk in a room of people who have questionable morals, of maybe like cheaters or liars or stealers, and I'm still going to be who I am.
Mm-hmm.
And I can just be true. And I think that's such a great skill to have in the workforce, in the community, just as a human being.
I also wanted to get a little bit into mental health because you're very outspoken about it. And I want to know, what would you say to people that want to get into therapy, but like they're kind of nervous about it?
I would say that life gets a lot easier to live when you accept that the only control you have is what you do. And that's exactly what therapy is. When I went to therapy, I tried to talk crap about everybody but me. Pero él me hace esto, pero ella, pero mi mamá, pero no, ella es así. And therapy does a good job at constantly bringing you back to no, take accountability. I remember my first few therapists that I had, because I bounced around. I wanted one that agreed with me, and I finally realized they're not going to agree with me. Saying, you're going to say nothing but I statements in this, in this call. And so then I had to say what I feel like this. Well, and that was the biggest thing for me, because when I started letting go of controlling everything around me, but only what I can do, I felt so powerful and so confident in myself. And so also taking accountability, you also are able to uncover what your traumas are. We're all a little crazy. And so instead of being like, no, pero ellos me hacen esto, I had to learn, no, I'm actually codependent. I'm depending on other people to make me happy. And that's hard to hear. That's a hit to you. And so to me, I was in therapy just learning so much about myself, to the point where I couldn't even think or blame other people, because I was being revealed so much information about me and what I could or could not do to make that better. And I almost became like obsessed with uncovering who I was. And it's so scary when you think about, how am I 29 years old and I don't even know who I really am, because we're so focused on the outer, and we do that to ignore what we really have inside. I'm here like, I'm trying to save the world, and I'm trying to do this and putting on events, and I'm trying to change people, and I'm trying to get people to see their full potential. And I was losing myself so much in that process. To me, therapy was reminding me that I have full control of fixing myself. So if I come across someone that is not good for me, los quito de mi vida. It's not about trying to change them. And I try to change so many people and situations in my life that it was just driving me insane. I ended therapy. So I had my last session actually last Wednesday, and I'm done. And clearly, that doesn't mean I'm healed. That doesn't mean I'm better. And something my therapist said, like, you're gonna live the rest of your life with these traumas because they don't go away, but you're gonna be so much better at reacting to them, at taking care of yourself through them. And, I believe that. I have full faith that I'm going to be a lot better at saying, you know what, I'm just going to put a boundary, remove myself from the situation or this person. Then I'm going to check in with myself. What can I do about these feelings? Okay, and then move on.
It's very important in my opinion. I'm also in therapy too and learning a lot, but it's hard. It's very hard. But
down like notes that you take from therapy.
Yeah, I do.
That's so powerful.
Yeah, I always, because I forget easily, so I'm writing everything.
And you know what? I forget too. So I would write everything down, but now that I finished it and I go back, it blows my mind to even be like, I can't believe I was in that mindset, and I date it. So I'll be like, man, like in July, I was having anxiety attacks, but then like in October, I was depressed. And you really do forget, you suppress and forget what's painful. So I always tell people, write your notes, but either during your therapy sessions or as soon as you leave or hang up, because you really do need to remind yourself where you've been in that walk and that journey, because a little bit of change every day, doesn't feel a lot, but looking back and being like, oh, that was a long path.
But all worth it.
Yes.
To end this conversation, I wanted to ask, what advice would you give to girls and boys watching this?
My advice would be for everyone, I challenge for everyone to find out what their purpose in life is. And it does not have to be deep. People think my purpose is to solve world hunger or to cure cancer. I had to do so much digging in myself to find out my purpose. And I truly believe that my purpose is to lead people to help. That could be that someone needs a contact or a resource. It could just be that I hosted an event and I put a smile on someone's face that day. That's help. And so I just wake up every day and I focus on that. And when you focus on that, no one can rob you of your happiness. And naturally, you're going to be successful because you're living your purpose. And you don't have to be rich and you don't need to have a lot of followers. You even have to be known to serve your purpose. And I think that social media glorifies popularity. So a lot of people think that they need this big, massive audience to be doing something impactful, and you don't. Your purpose could be a caretaker. You just naturally take care of people and you love people. So if you find a career in that, you're gonna find happiness in your job every day. If you find friends and relationships that feed into that, you're gonna naturally be really happy. And so this is advice I would give my children, is let's look inward and what did God put you on this earth to do? And it's okay if it's something so small. And that's such a long-winded answer. Find your purpose and then revolve your life around that. And there's going to be no option, but happiness is going to come from that and fulfillment. I truly feel like in the midst of the things that I've gone through that have been hard, I am still living and walking in my purpose. So there's always happiness at the end of the tunnel because of that.
Thank you so much, Dayana, for taking your time being on my podcast. This conversation will help others continue fighting on and making their dreams come true, porque si se puede. Thank you for watching and listening to my podcast, Real Conversation with Patty, and I'll see you guys on the next.